In the autumn of 1992, a vacuum cleaner company in Britain accidentally became a budget airline. For the price of a 100-pound vacuum cleaner, ordinary families were promised 2 free tickets to New York. Round trip. No catch. Allegedly. What happened next wasn't a marketing win. It was a full-blown national meltdown. Riot police at travel agents, executives fired, lawsuits stacked to the ceiling, and a company that had survived 2 world wars brought to its knees by a coupon. This is the story of how one desperate sales pitch became one of the most catastrophic marketing decisions in corporate history. To understand why a vacuum cleaner company would ever offer free international flights, you have to understand how badly Hoover needed a miracle. By the early 1990s, the name Hoover had become so synonymous with vacuuming that people used it as a verb, and that was precisely the problem. The brand was a household word, but it wasn't a growing business. Britain was deep in a recession. Interest rates were brutal. Unemployment was climbing, and nobody was rushing out to replace a perfectly functional vacuum cleaner. Worse, Hoover's warehouses were quietly filling up with a very specific problem: an oversupply of older model appliances that weren't moving. So Hoover's UK marketing team came up with an idea that sounded, on paper, like genius. Not a discount, not a rebate. Something bigger, something that would make headlines. Buy any Hoover product worth £100 or more and get 2 free flights to Europe. Spend a little more and you'd get 2 free tickets to New York or Orlando. It was pitched internally as a loyalty-style promotion, something to clear out inventory while generating a wave of positive press. The logic seemed sound. Flights are expensive to the public, but Hoover assumed, and this is the critical word, assumed, that most people wouldn't actually bother redeeming them. Maybe they'd forget. Maybe the paperwork would put them off. Maybe only a small, manageable fraction would ever book a seat. They based this assumption on how similar promotions had quietly performed elsewhere. Nobody stress-tested it against the one variable that should have been obvious. This was Britain in a recession, and free transatlantic flights were being offered for the price of a household appliance most families needed anyway. The campaign launched in the UK in the summer of 1992, and for the first few weeks, it looked like exactly what Hoover wanted: a modest, manageable bump in sales. Then something changed. Word got out, and it didn't spread through advertising. It spread through kitchens, pubs, and office break rooms, in that unstoppable British way that a genuinely good deal spreads. Because here's the thing, nobody at Hoover seemed to calculate. A family of 4 doesn't need one 100-pound vacuum. They need cheap flights to Florida. So instead of buying one appliance, people started buying 2, 3, 4 irons, kettles, cheap vacuums nobody even wanted, purely to unlock enough free tickets for the whole family to go to Disney World. Some people didn't even want the appliances. They gave them away, sold them for scrap. One detail that would later become infamous: it was, for a brief window, mathematically cheaper to buy a Hoover product you'd never use than to buy a plane ticket outright. Hoover thought they were selling vacuum cleaners. What they'd actually done, without realizing it, was become the cheapest travel agency in the country. And travel agencies, unlike vacuum cleaner companies, need something Hoover never accounted for: enough actual airplane seats to put people on. So what happens when a company promises a finite resource, a seat on a plane, to a potentially infinite number of customers? That's where this story stops being a marketing case study and starts becoming a genuine crisis. By late summer 1992, Hoover's promotion had gone from a modest campaign to a full-blown phenomenon. sales of qualifying appliances exploded. On the surface, that should have been fantastic news. A struggling company suddenly moving warehouses full of stock. But every single one of those purchases came with a liability attached. 2 flights Hoover now legally owed someone. Hoover had partnered with a travel agency to handle the bookings, working on the assumption that redemption rates would stay low and manageable. Instead, hundreds of thousands of customers applied. Estimates from the time suggest over 200,000 people qualified for free flights, far beyond anything the promotion's budget or the airline seat allocations could realistically support. And this is where the second, quieter disaster began. Hoover hadn't actually pre-booked the seats. They'd essentially sold a promise, banking on the idea that demand would trickle in slowly enough to sort out logistics as they went. Instead, it hit like a tidal wave, and there simply weren't enough seats on the routes people wanted, on the dates people wanted them. Customers who had done everything right, bought the product, filled in the forms, waited the required weeks, started hitting a wall. Applications were delayed for months. Phone lines were permanently jammed. Flight dates people requested were unavailable, sometimes for the entire following year. People who'd planned family holidays around these tickets were left in limbo, holding a valid claim to a flight that, in practice, didn't seem to exist. And when thousands of frustrated ticketless customers in the UK feel cheated by a major household brand, they don't just complain quietly, they organize. Ad hoc customer action groups started forming, some of the earliest examples of coordinated consumer backlash in the pre-internet era, held together by phone trees, newsletters, and sheer collective fury. The press smelt blood immediately. What had been glowing headlines about free flights 3 months earlier flipped entirely. Now the story was about broken promises, corporate incompetence, and everyday families who'd spent their savings on appliances, chasing a holiday that never came. Behind closed doors, Hoover's UK management was in genuine panic. Every appliance sold was now a financial hole, not a profit. The cost of actually honoring every flight was ballooning far beyond anything the original promotion had budgeted. Analysts and later reporting would put the eventual bill in the tens of millions of pounds, an amount that dwarfed any revenue the sales spike had brought in. And Hoover's American parent company at the time, Maytag, wasn't just watching from a distance. This wasn't a rogue regional office anymore. It was becoming a financial emergency, significant enough to threaten the parent company's own bottom line, all because of a promotion someone in the UK marketing department had approved, without ever running the worst-case numbers. The company now faced an impossible choice: honor every ticket and risk genuine, company-threatening losses, or start finding ways to slow walk, deny, or restrict claims, and risk turning a PR problem into a full legal and reputational catastrophe. They chose, at first, a bit of both, and that decision is exactly what turned a bad promotion into a scandal that would follow the Hoover name for decades. Because when a company starts making it harder for customers to claim something they were legally promised, people don't get discouraged, they get lawyers. As 1992 turned into 1993, the Hoover Free Flights promotion stopped being a customer service headache and became a legal one. Customers who'd been stonewalled, delayed, or flatly denied their promised tickets began pursuing formal complaints and legal action. Consumer protection bodies got involved. Trading standards inquiries were opened. What had started as a clever inventory clearing gimmick was now being scrutinized as a potential case of misleading promotional practice. Internally, heads began to roll. Senior Hoover UK executives connected to the promotion's approval and rollout were removed from their positions. This wasn't a case of one junior marketer making a rogue call. The fallout reached genuinely senior levels of the company, a sign of just how seriously the parent company viewed the damage. Maytag, watching its UK subsidiary hemorrhage money and reputation simultaneously, made the call to step in directly. This was no longer something the regional office could manage alone. The financial exposure was real, and it was growing every single week that unresolved claims sat unhonored. By the time the dust began to settle, the total cost of actually making good on the promotion, flights, compensation, legal fees, administrative cleanup, has been estimated at somewhere in the region of 48 to 50 million pounds. For context, that's a sum that, at the time, represented a genuinely significant slice of Hoover's entire European operating value. A vacuum cleaner promotion had, quite literally, threatened to sink the ship. And here's the detail that turns this from a bad quarter into an enduring legend. Many customers were still fighting for flights they'd been promised years after the original promotion ended. Some reports and consumer accounts describe people receiving their tickets, or compensation in lieu of them, as late as 3, 4, even 5 years after they'd originally bought the appliance. Think about that. A company promised a getaway to Orlando, and some families didn't actually board that flight until their kids were old enough to have entirely different interests. The promotion that was supposed to generate goodwill instead generated a slow-burning, multi-year reputation wound, the kind that doesn't show up in a single bad headline, but in years of quiet, simmering resentment. By the mid-1990s, Maytag made the decision to sell off Hoover's European operations entirely. Now, to be clear, that sale can't be pinned on the free flights fiasco alone. Hoover's European business had broader structural challenges, but the flight scandal had already done something no single bad quarter could undo. It had permanently tied the Hoover name in Britain to the words free flights, not as a triumph, but as a punchline. And that's the strange afterlife this scandal took on. Doing a Hoover, or referencing Hoover flights, became a kind of shorthand in British culture for a company promise that was too good to be true, a cautionary idiom born entirely out of a marketing meeting that went catastrophically wrong. So how does a company avoid ever becoming the next Hoover? That question didn't just haunt Hoover's leadership. It became required reading in business schools around the world, and the lessons it teaches are far bigger than one bad vacuum cleaner promotion. The Hoover free flights fiasco didn't just cost money, it became one of the most widely taught case studies in marketing failure, cited for decades in business courses, as the textbook example of what happens when a company fails to model worst-case demand. The core mistake wasn't the idea of a promotion itself. Loyalty rewards, bundled incentives, free gift campaigns. These are standard, often effective marketing tools. The fatal error was assuming customer behavior would follow the company's convenience rather than the customer's own self-interest. Hoover built a promise around what they hoped people would do, instead of stress testing what people would actually, rationally, obviously do when offered genuinely free international flights. There's a second lesson buried in here too, one that's arguably more damaging than the first, the way Hoover handled the response. A miscalculated promotion is a mistake. Delaying, restricting, and stonewalling the customers who took you up on a legitimate, advertised offer is a choice. And it's the choice that turned a costly blunder into a scandal with staying power. The initial error cost Hoover money. The handling of that error cost Hoover its reputation. It's worth asking, could this have been avoided? In hindsight, yes, almost trivially, a capped number of redemptions, blackout dates communicated up front, a tiered system limiting flights per household. Any one of these guardrails, common in loyalty programs today, would have prevented the entire crisis. Modern airline miles programs, hotel point systems, and credit card reward schemes all build in exactly these kinds of limits, often because Hoover, and a handful of copycat disasters that followed it, demonstrated so vividly what happens without them. There's also a quieter irony worth sitting with. Hoover's name had become so dominant that hoovering meant vacuuming, full stop, no matter what brand of machine you actually owned. That kind of brand dominance is the dream of every marketing department on earth. And yet, even total market saturation couldn't protect the company from a single catastrophically undermodeled promotion. Brand strength bought them customers. It didn't buy them forgiveness. Today, the Hoover brand still exists, still sells appliances, still holds a place in households worldwide. But ask anyone in Britain over the age of 40 about Hoover, and there's a strong chance the free flight story comes up before anything about suction power or build quality ever does. That's the real cost of this scandal. Not the £50 million, but the fact that 3 decades later, this story is still the first thing people remember. And maybe that's the most fitting ending of all. A company built its entire identity on being everywhere, on being the default, the household name nobody had to think twice about. And one overconfident promotion was enough to make people think twice forever. So the next time a company offers you something that seems too generous to be real, a free upgrade, a bonus reward, a deal with no visible catch, remember the vacuum cleaner that promised the world and spent the better part of a decade trying to figure out how to actually deliver it. Because sometimes the most dangerous thing a company can do is give people exactly what it promised